Welcome to your intelligence briefing. During a flight to Florida, the sitting president of the United States, Donald Trump, told reporters that, in his words, there is one boss in China, and that person is Xi Jinping. Here is his full statement.
Speaking of China, sir, there was a military purge in that country a week ago. What do you make of that?
Well, as far as you're talking about China?
Yeah,
As far as I'm concerned, there's one boss in China. That's President Xi. That's the President of him.
Are there any concerns about stability or?
No, I think President Xi is the boss. I watch it very closely. He's highly respected in China. He's the boss.
He added that this is the individual he deals with directly and follows closely. Donald Trump is not a neutral observer of China. He is the sitting president of the United States and someone who has negotiated directly with Beijing at the highest level. In the same exchange with reporters, Trump described Xi Jinping as the sole decision maker in China, emphasizing that, from his perspective, authority there is centralized in a single individual rather than distributed across institutions. This framing matters not because it must be correct, but because it deliberately strips away complexity. It compresses China's political and military system into a single variable, the judgment of one leader. The question this raises is not whether President Trump's view is accurate, but whether recent reporting increasingly aligns with that interpretation. So here's how we're going to approach this. First, we'll stay with this interpretation of centralized authority and examine how it appears in recent reporting on China's military leadership. Then, we'll step back and connect that reporting to broader institutional and analytical assessments. This briefing does not assume intent, predict outcomes, or assess probabilities. It focuses on structure, how decision-making authority appears to be evolving, and what constraints or risks may emerge from that structure. Where reporting relies on anonymous sources or politically aligned outlets, those limitations are explicitly noted. According to reporting from Business Insider, China's People's Liberation Army is undergoing one of the most severe leadership contractions in its modern history. Dozens of senior officers have been removed or placed under investigation, including figures once described as close and trusted advisors to Xi Jinping. Most notably, of the 7 officials appointed to the Central Military Commission in 2022, only 2 remain in position today. Xi himself and the Commission's anti-corruption chief, operational, strategic, and command roles have either been vacated or filled through interim arrangements. Analysts interviewed in this reporting emphasize that the loss of experienced leadership raises short-term coordination challenges, especially for complex joint operations requiring tight integration across multiple military domains. At the same time, official PLA media frames these purges as strengthening discipline and political loyalty. The structural tension is clear. Political control appears to be increasing, while institutional redundancy is declining. At this point, the analysis enters a higher risk domain: internal military stability and elite cohesion. Reporting from The Telegraph cites U.S. intelligence assessments alleging severe corruption within certain PLA units, including missile forces found to be non-operational due to construction and procurement failures. The reporting notes that the entire leadership of the rocket force was removed prior to public disclosure of these assessments. These claims remain unverified by independent inspection and should be treated as indicators rather than confirmed facts. Separately, the Wall Street Journal reports that Xi Jinping has now removed nearly all senior generals who might otherwise serve as internal counterweights or dissenting voices, particularly on Taiwan-related military strategy. Across these sources, the common element is not motive, but outcome. Authority has become increasingly concentrated, while internal debate appears structurally constrained. To understand what this configuration implies, it helps to separate the analysis into layers. Institutional layer. The Central Military Commission is functionally compressed, with fewer experienced commanders and reduced internal checks. This increases decision speed while lowering error correction capacity. Capability layer. Despite leadership disruptions, China continues to expand its naval, air, and missile forces. Modernization and corruption appear to be occurring simultaneously rather than sequentially. Narrative environment layer. Some reporting, including claims circulated via politically aligned media, suggests that parts of the PLA oppose a military move against Taiwan. These accounts rely heavily on anonymous sourcing and are best understood as narrative signals rather than institutional evidence. Together, these layers define a decision environment that is narrower and more centralized than before. At this point, it is worth pausing on what centralized authority means in practice. Before we move to this part, one quick note. Some of the background material and source level context behind this assessment doesn't always fit cleanly into a public briefing. For those who've asked, there's now a small member space where I occasionally share analytical notes and early briefing access when relevant. The public briefings remain exactly as they are. Let's move on. In institutional systems like China's, centralization is less about individual personality and more about how information flows upward and how decisions flow downward. When authority narrows, reporting lines shorten. But feedback loops also contract. This can increase clarity and speed. But it also reduces friction, the kind of friction that helps complex organizations detect and correct error. Military systems, in particular, rely on layered judgment. Plans are refined, challenged, and revised before execution. The question raised by recent reporting is not whether control is tightening, but whether the system's capacity to absorb error is shrinking alongside it. Several analysts describe the current phase of PLA restructuring as one that prioritizes political reliability. Political reliability does not equal incompetence, nor does loyalty exclude expertise. But when loyalty becomes the primary filter, decision velocity increases while decision quality becomes more sensitive to information distortion. Over time, hierarchical systems learn what information is welcome and what is not. This can produce faster decisions based on increasingly sanitized inputs. This is not speculation. It is a pattern observed across highly centralized systems regardless of ideology. Modern Chinese military planning spans multiple domains. Any large-scale operation would require synchronized action across naval, air, missile, cyber, space, logistical, and civil military systems. This is not only a question of hardware. It is a question of organizational trust. Who is empowered to act independently? Who can pause or revise a plan under pressure? And who bears responsibility when outcomes diverge from expectations? Leadership churn does not eliminate capability, but it introduces uncertainty into command relationships that are built over time. One of the most notable features in recent reporting is not what has been said publicly, but who has stopped appearing. Senior officers absent from major meetings. Figures removed without successors publicly named. Language that emphasizes discipline and purification rather than integration or readiness. None of this proves instability, but collectively, it signals internal reconfiguration under pressure. In intelligence analysis, absence is not evidence, but it is a reason to watch closely. At this point, we've laid out the reporting and the assessments. Individually, none of these facts is decisive, but together, they outline a structural trade-off between control and resilience. This brings us back to the initial trigger. When a sitting US president describes China as having one boss, he is not offering a theory. He is describing how the system appears at the point of direct engagement. That description resonates now not because it is provocative, but because it increasingly mirrors independent reporting about internal structure. Not omnipotence, not inevitability, but compression. If authority continues to concentrate, the most important indicators will be procedural rather than rhetorical. Watch how quickly leadership vacancies are filled and from where. Watch whether military exercises emphasize adaptability or scripted execution. Watch whether institutional language reinforces collective competence or singular responsibility. These are not indicators of intent. They are indicators of organizational posture. Power concentrated at the top can create decisiveness. It can also create fragility. The balance between those outcomes does not hinge on any single leader's personality, but on how much institutional elasticity remains beneath them. That elasticity, and whether it is being preserved or consumed, is the signal environment that now matters most. This has been your intelligence briefing. If you support this format, I'll keep pushing toward a more frequent cadence, while keeping the background and context deep enough to be worth your time. There are more in-depth analyses on this situation across the channel. You're welcome to click through to watch or listen to those briefings. I'm Eric Chen. See you around.